Welcome everyone to the teams. As usual, we've got a late change because Lek Dog's about as reliable as Cam Paulson. Joining me is the legend that is Paolo. Good day to you, mate. Thank you very much for helping me.
You have got me at my very best, Bobby. I'm dressed sharp. Just finished off the working week. Thank God it's Friday, and let's get stuck into teams on the Blue Abroad channel, mate. I'm pumped. I'm looking forward to it with the early announcement this afternoon, mate.
Mate, I'm excited. Obviously, the big news is the legend that is Motlop is a guarantee to start because, as Voss said, he plays a lot of table tennis. So evidently that's our new selection criteria, which is exciting. But obviously, Paolo, talk to me. Twitter's erupting, isn't it? It's probably been the biggest scandal on Twitter since Amber Heard admitted to defecating on bed sheets. No Harry Mackay.
Yeah, well, evidently, we've our team's been thrown out like a 3-day halibut at a Gordon Ramsay restaurant. Everyone's just exploded, which is. I don't know. I'm just very excited to see by what they're going to dish up on the weekend because this is going to really test the tactical nous and the intelligence of our coaching panel, and it's going to test the playing group to see if they can tinker with their roles a little bit. I don't think anything is going to really change. I don't think too much will change. I think we're going to see a different layer to this team, which I'm really excited about.
Well, I think one thing, as the teams do flow through, I do think that one thing this side has done with layouts, with injuries, for some reason, they are very good at adapting. If you remember, when Cripps was out, that was a disaster. When Hewitt was out, that was a disaster. But every time they've had a test, these guys have somehow come out of it. And I think, for me, all it says is they haven't got tall timber, but they have been showing great pressure. And when opportunities have come for the smalls, they've kicked goals, which is something we don't talk about. Mackay and Kerner are taking the piss. So I'm with you. Exciting to see how they go.
Yeah, and I think too, you mentioned the smalls as well. And I think if you look at purely the stats that are shown, the majority of stats that are shown on these like AFL apps and Footy Live app and all that, you'd have thought last week, oh, geez, Owies and Durden, their output wasn't great, but I thought they were probably I think they were in our top 10, at least our top 8 last week, just the way they harassed and pressured defenders around the ball. And that in turn creates opportunity, Pommy. And now look at this young Jesse Motlop gets his chance to come into the side, and he comes into a side with momentum and a side that understands what winning is about now. And it's a perfect time to debut a youngster, which is it's just great. It's nice to see us up and about and debuting kids early in the year rather than debuting them, towards the back end of the year when we know we can't make the 8 and we're sort of forced to.
Mate, spot on. And I think the big thing for me, as I'm just going to put the teams up at the bottom, is that we've seen from looking at Motlop this last couple of weeks, he has been really focused on playing that high half forward role that we've seen from Martin. So It's weird that since Carlton have had these injuries, they pre-plan it almost. And the team is officially confirmed. It is backline is Newman, Wheater, Plowman, Doc, Williams, Sard. Centre line, Noons, Cripps, Walsh. Forwards, O'Brien, Kerno, Carroll, Motlop, Silvani, Durden. TDK, Hewitt, Shara, the followers. Owies, Kemp, Kennedy, and Fisher, which basically means Kemp, Hewitt, Motlop, Plowman in for Mackay, Martin, Boyd, Young, and Cottrell drops out onto the emergency sub-bench pending tomorrow. And Connor Stone is there in for Hill, and Flynn, interesting enough, is omitted. So they've sacrificed one of their tall timbers.
Yeah, I think that could potentially be purely based on, I know there is forecast rain for Sunday in Sydney. So that actually might end up playing in our favour, because if I'd actually be praying for the rain to come for me, really, because that in turn is just going to lead to stoppage after stoppage. And what's our strong point? Centre clearances, our stoppage work, our ability to create scores from the stoppage has been, from centre clearance as well, has been phenomenal this year. So, I think it's going to favour our bigger bodies around the ball. And look, I don't think a lot has to change up. Like even Vossi said it, and we kept talking about it during the week. Is that like nothing much is going to change? Like, I mean, what do they have to tinker with aside from personnel? Like the structure and what they've done has stood up this year, and Vossi made mention of that in the presser today. So I don't know where this whole, I know maybe up forward it's going to change a little bit, obviously with our structure up there, but I don't know what changes too much around the ground. Even with Young coming out, Kemp can go down back, and the beauty of it now is that we understand that he's been exposed to the forward role for the majority of the VFL season, but we've also seen him in the last fortnight go down back and play a good role down there as well. So what's been the motto this year? When one goes down, another one comes in, and they've dealt with it quite successfully when the chips have been down with regards to that.
Mate, spot on. And Hugo, thank you very much. $31 donation. He says he's nervous about GWS. Let's talk about the wet and GWS. GWS, obviously, the top tackling scene in the comp. This is where they are super strong. But it's interesting. They are the second worst offenders in the AFL at unforced errors and pressure-based errors. And it has been something that's littered GWS this year. Now, Carlton, their tackle numbers are very strong. Carlton also lead top 3 in handballs and kicks against a side that is poor at marking as well. They're a low kick side, handball heavy. This kind of does say to Carlton that although Bruce is probably going to get the better of TDK, you would imagine. He's a very good ruckman and one of the best in the comp this year statistically.
Yep.
Carlton have the damage and the ability to put that pressure on, because one thing that no one talks about is our midfield takes contact and handballs away, which is what GWS base their entire model on. Carlton have shown the last 2 weeks particularly that willingness to take the contact, hold it a bit longer, handball out to a runner. And really, when it's wet, that's the only way.
Yeah, I think you saw it as well, evidently in the Adelaide game, where I think what they call it is they call it hedge and draw. So like our midfielders are sort of taking the contact or wanting the opposition to come towards them and then feeding off the ball to the outside. And I know I brag on about it, and Rocco and Mars and Michael Maloney and all that. They're probably going to smack me across the head for saying this again, but what do the best teams in all of world sport do? Short, sharp ball movement to soften their way through the opposition. That's the only way you can do it. It's the only way you can do it. And then you get your good ball users on the outside as well. So, look, I mean, granted, I think people have overreacted a little bit with the Mackay out. Look, he is very important to our side. There's no doubt about that. But for me, I think there's enough in there to suggest that we can kick a winning score against GWS. So look, I'm trying not to undersell the omission of Mackay, because he's a reigning common medalist. He's a very special player to us. But there is no way known that the team that goes out there on the park this weekend, there are no excuses. There's no way known that team cannot beat GWS on Sunday. I'm sorry, there's not.
Mate, in my opinion, and you know me, I'm biased because I'm all about this guy. But last year we went into games expecting to win with just Harry, right?
Yeah.
You've added a lot better ball movement, a lot better strategy, a lot better setup around stoppages, a lot better at penetrating the opposition's strength than what we had before. Yeah. Kerno brings something that Harry can't do, his ability to play on the ground as well. We saw the lovely snaggy kick last week. Week before, he had 2 crumbing goals. Here, this week, I think, is their backline, apart from Keith, is very undersized. And if you watch Keith, he's got the mobility of the dude who opened the door for the Adams family. So that's Kerno's one worry. But I've noticed this week, covering it in depth, Kerno happens to take the 3rd tall as well because of that crumbing threat. And he's naturally drawn to deal with any ground ball, which I think is why Cripps is so dangerous, because suddenly Cripps is on technically a midget. So I think all Carlton have got to do is just we talked about it last week, you and me, Paolo. Purpose. Move the ball with purpose. And Harry is kind of forgotten about this week.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, Harry and Charlie, I would assume that they had very minimal effect on how many inside 50s we actually had on the weekend. I know their movement in tandem together is going to create opportunity for us to move the ball forward of centre, obviously. But if we're getting upwards of 60 inside 50s, and what did we have last week? 74 inside 50s, something like that. The opportunity is going to be there, if we continue to play the way we have. And, if Hewitt comes into the side, I think it just frees up Jack Carroll to potentially become more damaging on the outside. And we've seen how clean he actually is when he's able to get the ball on the outside. I know that he's had a few shots at goal that have been a little bit errant, but I reckon it really opens up. And you look at that forward line, like Charlie, Durden, Silvani, Motlop, always will be through there as well. So, look, it's, look, the back line is still very strong. Newman, Wiedering, Plowman will come in and do a job. Sard, Williams, Doherty. As I said, I can't see why this team cannot beat GWS as well. And you mentioned it too, mate, like different ball movement, different structures around each contest, different structures to the way we set up defensively as well. That has led to us winning more games than personnel being in and out of the team, period. That's going to factor in way more than what personnel is.
Yeah, and let's look at the personnel. An interesting one here, I think, is Kemp coming in. So I think Kemp's got the biggest job in this game. And that is, I suspect he will play a lot on Himmelberg. And what Carlton did really well last week, and we've kind of been gifted that North, Adelaide and GWS play the same style of football slightly better than the one before. Now, we've noticed that what happens with Young and Wiedering to stop transition defence is TDK and Doc have become a team on the wing. Mm-hmm. Wiedering stays in the goal square and Young pushes high up the ground as a body to try and put a bit of pressure on that corridor kick, which intercepts Carlton. Now, Himmelberg lives on that 60-metre arc. He is their entry point. That's what they're looking for. And Kemp and TDK are going to have to work like Young and Kemp did, like Young and TDK did last week, at taking away that space for Tex to run in. Himmelberg, you watch this week, I'd say 70% of their entries will come from that kick down the right-hand or the left-hand channel to a Himmelberg because Hogan lives in the square. But Kemp, for me, better user, better danger on transition, and can also bring it to ground. I think that should be an intra-turning matchup. I think that's a key matchup.
Yeah, I think it is as well. And you mentioned, too, the way we set up. Like, that structure has got nothing to do... Like, Kemp comes in and they play the same way, Bobby. Like, it's not... And Kemp, I actually think, he really set the tone for the defensive tune and the defensive efforts when we played against North Melbourne, the game I called a couple of weeks ago. Like, he played deep down in defence. And I think we were talking about it too when we did our PPI, is that we thought Kemp was actually going to be the intercept defender this season. And I think he actually played that role quite well towards the back end of last year. And it was intriguing to see that they chucked him up forward for, or they've thrown him up forward for the majority of this season and through the VFL. But in the last couple of weeks, he's played defensively. So, look, if something is not working out defensively up there or something's not working up forward, at least we have the luxury of knowing that he's played the forward role, for 4 or 5 rounds in the VFL this year. We can saul him up there if need be as well. But I think his role will be coming in and covering for Young, as you said, patrolling that 60-metre range on transition as well to really cut GWS down when they do try to hurt us on transition, because I think that's when they're playing their best football, when they're able to hurt teams on the turnover with their slick ball movement.
Mate, spot on. The other we've got is Motlop, who's obviously making his debut. For me, he's someone that I think, when I watched Carlton the last 2 weeks, and I don't know what you've seen from you being at the game, but we've really got a system of moving the ball that zigzags. We look for the corridor, we look back out wide and go back in. Watching Motlop the last 2 weeks, people have criticised his goal output, but for me, I think he's added a new layer of being able to be that conduit between the forward and the midfield. And I think That's why JSOS is so key to this system. And I don't see enough from Martin. Where you watch Motlop and you look at his heat map in VFL, he works so hard to be that extra layer. And when he turns and goes, he's gone. I think he could be a guy that really stretches GWS out wide late on.
Yeah, well, I think as well, the one thing that really excited me in the VFL over the last handful of weeks is that they've actually been slinging him into the midfield for patches, which really excites me because I think it's an area that I think the run and carry and the spread out of midfield is something that we need to continue to evolve. And I think he can bring that in patches throughout the game. If it's getting a little bit too, if that ruck maul or that maul is starting to develop, stoppage after stoppage, I think he can really, if they need to, they can throw him in there for, a stoppage or three, and he can maybe break open a line with that regard. So you don't have to throw him in there for the majority of the quarter. He doesn't have the tank to. But what I've actually liked is that he's actually quite really well trimmed up. Like he's not fit, if that makes sense. So I think he can definitely run through the middle and create a dangerous option, which, as I said, we've seen him do in the VFL. And I don't think, you can look a lot, you can look into, as we say, you can look into disposals and goal output and all that in the VFL. But I think that if you're playing well in an AFL system with AFL listed boys and alongside players who were in form at AFL level, I think the output eventually does come. We saw it with Harry. Harry only kicked, I think, a max of 4 goals in the reserves when he played down there. And, we've seen what he's done over the last few years. Look, granted, it is Motlop's debut, and we don't want to put too much pressure on him, but I think he's debuting at a fantastic time. It's a perfect time to play him.
I couldn't agree more. And I think one thing that's really impressed me from watching his juniors is he's really added a layer of tackles. He's really refined that. He's always been pressure act, doesn't quite get the reward for tackles, but that Fremantle game that Frankston game in the fourth, when he tackled a player, they stayed tackled as well. When he takes the arms, he stops you releasing it, particularly in the forward. And sometimes that's my question with Carlton's forwards. They don't quite take the arms. They get that handball away. Motlop loves the fight, and he showed that as a kid. He loved hurting these bigger blokes, throwing them to the ground, showing them no respect. So I think he slots in, and he'll be like an old pair of gloves. I expect to see him settle in tomorrow quite easy.
Yeah, well, they wouldn't have picked him if he wasn't going to otherwise. I mean, we bit the bullet with Jack Carroll playing him, a fortnight ago, and he's been fantastic for us. I love what he's brought to the table, and Motlop's clean as well, and we know he's going to have the tricks up his sleeve as well. Being a young Indigenous boy, we know how magical they are with ball in hand. He comes from good stock. So, and I love that Voss is picking these. As I said, I love that he's picking these young players early in the season and showing some faith in them too. So, I'm super excited for what they're going to show this weekend. And as I said, it's a test of what the coaches can come up with on the tactical sheet. I mean, you got to find another way you got to find another avenue to goal outside of Harry. Simple as that. Look, personally, as I said, nothing changes with regards to midfield. Nothing changes with regards to defence. The only thing that really changes is the way we function our ball movement going probably forward of centre and inside 50. So I actually think we're going to be forced to go low and short, and I think that's how we should be playing anyway, even if Harry's in the team. I think that's what the best teams do. So it could be a blessing in disguise that we're a little bit shorter, I think.
Mate, I think it adds another layer. And I also think you look at the next 6 weeks, 5 games, Mackay is out. Kind of works out well because you've got Sydney the week after. They are tough, but you've got Collingwood, Essendon in between Richmond as well. So the Collingwood and Essendon, Carlton shouldn't really need at all because the way they've been destroyed this year is through midfield dominance, which is what we bring anyway. So it's that. So let's get round to some of your questions. This is the first one from Matt Kelly because everyone will ask this. What more can Dow do? Paolo, what more can Dow do?
Well, look, I mean, that midfield is mighty, mighty hard to get into. I mean, the question is that, all right, go. All right, let's go through the names in midfield, Poppy. So we've got a centre line of Jack Nunes, Patrick Cripps, and Sam Walsh. Dow cannot play wing. That's not his role, so that's null and void. He's not taking Patrick Cripps' spot, obviously. And then the followers are George Hewitt and Adam Chera. I mean, so whose spot is he going to take?
Well, I mean, I'm with you. I think it's hasta luego to show my amazing ability to speak different languages. But I don't see it. For me, I will put everyone back to the fourth quarter for Frankston. If you go back and watch the fourth quarter of Frankston, that told me everything I needed to know from Paddy Dow. He had 30-odd touches, 20 coming in the first half, and the engine went, and you saw under pressure, it looked horrible. Like I was actually watching him in the fourth, and I was like, if I was Voss, I'd be watching this and thinking, Williamson, Dow, my senior players, guys who have played a lot of football, Setterfield as well, they literally put the white flag up and said, can I go home, please? And
yeah.
And the problem is like, you look at Chera and Walsh, there's an argument that they can spring around and play other positions. Dow has never been a longevity player. His one skill set is burst speed. If you look at his kilometres run in the juniors, it's weak. It's a slow speed. So wing, no way. You can't play him. Potentially as a half forward, but we tried that before. Unfortunately for me, I think unless Dow can really break the doors down, and I'm talking break it down, Hewitt, Kennedy, and Cripps have owned it. And as to use Voss's words, I only have space on my list for 2 inside mids.
Exactly right. And I think the issue, I think Heath Buck actually summed it up beautifully too. I think, or was it? It might have been you, Pommy. Actually, it might have been both of you. I reckon Jack Carroll coming into the team has basically said, "Look, you don't offer enough, Dowie. Like, there's just not. You don't have enough. You don't have enough armory in your kit to be able to warrant being picked over these blokes." And look, that's not me saying that he's not going to get a game, this year, or he's not going to be on our list next year or anything like that, because opportunity will arise. But that last quarter, geez, they left a lot to be left. There were more questions than answers. What I made of it.
I watched it, and that scared me.
It did. Yeah.
Especially Setterfield, Williamson, and Dow. Them three.
Well, Setterfield went off at half time, so he was off as an emergency.
No, but Setterfield's first half, them first two quarters, they alarmed me, because I was watching it and I was more confused about who he was from that, because when he went on the wing, he played like an inside midfielder, and when he was on the ball, he played like a winger. I was like, I am so confused now. I don't know. And then Williamson and Dow in that fourth, they were poor. They were really poor.
Totally poor.
Totally poor. Totally poor. We've got another one from Patrick Lane. Are you concerned we're a smaller side now? No, McGovern, McDonald, Big Pitt, Mackay. Can we cover GWS's tolls?
Yeah, well, we can by controlling the play and actually playing the way we want to play. And look, if that's not going to happen, well, then their tools are obviously going to get on top. But you've got to stop supply. If you stop the supply, they're not going to be able to get. And if you affect the kick going forward of centre, affect the kick going inside forward 50, well, their tools are null and void at the end of the day. So it's a case of smalls v talls. Are our smalls going to have more of an impact on the game than their talls? And you'd argue to say that I actually think we've got their talls in the forward line covered. Like, Wiedering goes to Hogan, and Kempy will probably go to Himmelberg. And as you said, I think TDK and the like will have to roll back and play that role at around 60 metres out on transition and defensively too in front of our back six. So as I said, if you stop the supply, stop the ball getting in there effectively, that's how you stop the GWS tools. It's all what's Vossi's foundation, Pommy? The source, the contest. If you cannot win the contest and you cannot win at the source of the stoppage or the source of the ball, you may as well just not rock up.
Simple. Yeah, and I mean, I'd argue as well, Hogan and Himmelberg are their tolls 195 and 196. It's not tall. Do you know what I mean? In today's game, it's not tall enough. And I'd argue that Plowman, do you know what I mean? I would imagine Plowman, he will take a good part probably of Green, but you've also got worst case scenario, play Plowman on Hogan as a pure lockdown, because Hogan literally, if you look at his heat map, has never left the goal square in 2022. I'm not too sure he knows there's another part of ground at the moment. So in that way, like you say, if the ball's not coming in, we make them go shallow.
Yeah.
It's good POM stat for you. 30 of our inside 50s last week were rebound inside 50s. So basically in out, which I think Voss has talked about.
Yes.
Basically forcing them to kick deep for us to go straight back in. So if we're playing it in there at half, doesn't matter how big you guys are in the forward line if it's not getting there.
Pommy, pressure when they come out the back line. Pressure around the ball. And, if that drops off, we're buggered. It's as simple as that. And what I really liked last week is that it was sustained intensity. And that just tells me, that just puts to bed the argument that, they're not fit enough. They don't two-way run. They don't do this. The way you set up, mate. It's the way you set up. If you set up to be an efficient football team, it means you can run both ways with ease. And we did last week. Granted, they're obviously going to be buggered, but, sustained intensity is what is going to win your football games. And I'd be absolutely shocked if it dropped off this week. I'd be shocked.
Mate, I'm with you.
I think it'll ramp up with the smalls.
Mate, I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised this week. We'll get on to predictions, but we'll have a bit of a banter one because it's controversial. Liam Jones, everyone in the audience and Paolo, is he returning?
Yes. No, I don't know.
I was all excited then, Paolo.
I genuinely have no idea. Look, he would be handy to have on the weekend. But look, I mean, if the club want to go down that route, fair enough. But no, I think that ship has well and truly sailed, unfortunately. But who knows? Who knows? Never say never.
I reckon he's got more chance of coming back as I've got of this time next week hosting this show, looking like Rihanna.
Or wearing a Celtic Guernsey.
Oh yeah, that's a zero, then. Zero. I'd rather off myself than alive.
Are you? What area? I know we've been pretty adamant that we're going to rock up. But what are areas of concern do you think for us? Because I think there are, and Fremantle did expose it. But I actually think this year's results have been. I think the loss against Fremantle came down to us not being brave enough, and you can change that, And the Gold Coast game was probably an anomaly, Cripps went down and Pitt and whatever, but I just think it purely comes down to us being brave with the ball.
Mate, quarter 4 Frankston is what happened against Fremantle and Gold Coast. It was a side that doesn't back themselves in, that doesn't stick themselves to the task, and it's something that luckily Carlton had it twice in 3 weeks. And I could tell by Voss's face in the third quarter of this game when they kicked a late goal and he came down to the bench, he looked like he was going to put his hand through a player's head. Because even though he was 60 ahead, you could tell he was fuming because he demands perfection and acquitting yourself to the task. So I personally think my concern is GWS are going to bring the heat, and Carlton haven't felt the heat for about 3 weeks like this. Yeah. My concern here would be, how are they going to react to tackles? Are they going to be willing to really take that contact and really get the ball out wide and know that that is your only way of doing it? Knowing that they're very plan-based as well. So Walsh, Cripps, they are going to have a little bit of an issue because they are going to be treated. They are going to have people on them. They ain't going to get away with it. GWS are archaic. Best thing they've done is sack Cameron, get rid of him, because he coaches in a 90s mantra of tag, 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 and play the percentages. And today's game, for me, it's all about structure. It's all about dynamic, quick, sharp, fast, move, move, move. So that's my concern, is us getting bogged down too much into a fight, because it is going to be hard. But if they do it and they play like they did the last 2 weeks, they'll run this mob over by 30.
Yeah, I think the way I look at it is, I think there's obviously going to be some sort of an emotional response to the whole Leon Cameron, resignation. But I think I think that the key for us is to weather the storm early and just get on top of them early and take that away from them, set the tone nice and early in the game. And I think the one player that we need to clearly watch out on, he is their barometer, obviously, it's Toby Green. So if we can, and you said he's very similar to Rochelle in that if you lock him down early and you stop him early, well, then it's pretty much sayonara for GWS. So, mate, bring it on, mate. I have never been, I cannot remember for the life of me ever being this excited for a game on the weekend, even though we have a couple of outs. Like, I'm just super excited to see what they're going to dish up on the weekend. And 6-2, if we go 7-2, mate, it's you just set up the season, in a way that we haven't seen for donkey's years. So, mate, get excited. If we don't believe, as you said, Pommy, in the preseason, how are they going to believe?
Mate, spot on. Positive mindset always wins out. And before you go, usually it's Legdog who guarantees a 5,000 point victory. Last time you laughed when I said 70 points. I wasn't far off as well. But
you were very close.
Everyone in the audience, what are we thinking? What are you thinking, Paolo? Tell me.
Carlton by 2 points in a titanic struggle of the ages at Giants Stadium.
I like it. I'm going to go Carlton 11.
Goals?
No, just 11 points. 11 points. I'm not that confident, mate. I tell you, I could have put my hat on. Adelaide and North would be batterings, but this is going to be tighter than a frog's bottom, and frog's bottoms are watertight.
That's good. I will advise if people if they're a little bit worried about just go and watch Bossie's presser from today. I think that'll ease your nerves. A very, very cool, calm, and collected press conference it was, and there seemed to be a bit of a steely resolve about the man, which is nice to see, rather than what we saw for the majority of 2021, Pommy.
Mate, spot on. And before we do head off, on the game day, if you are in New South Wales, there is a function laid on by the wonderful guys and girls in the Carlton supporters group in New South Wales. Just at 1 till 1:30, it's a gold coin donation. They've got a raffle. They've got Tim Clark's there. It's a real big shindig. So go and support them, because the NSW do a wonderful job. Rafi's a good friend of the channel. He's a bit of a local legend. You'll recognise him from his cat, because he has his cat appears on the live stream. But yeah, that'll be going on there. It is at, I'm just bringing the address up now, the Locker Room, 1 till 2:30. So if you are in NSW, get down there and have a cheeky beer. Go say hello to the guys and girls down there who do a wonderful job for the Blues. Thank you, Paolo. Go and check Paolo out as well on Twitter. His Twitter is really good. It's inspirational. Paul said 05.
That's the one. That's the one.
You do see him. He's the good-looking one on the jumper punch.
I don't know if that's saying much, but anyway.
You're closest to 10. You can check me out anywhere on socials, Pommy and Oz. I'll be on the watch along this weekend. So I'll be hurling abuse, probably at Toby Green, because his dad punches policemen.
Lovely, Pommy, lovely. I'll be there at Preston City Oval tomorrow morning, calling the VFLW for the AFL website. So if anyone is interested in that, Darebin versus Geelong, it's a game that's going to have ramifications on the top 8 in the VFLW as we creep closer towards finals for that. So I'll be calling that game from 11 a.m. tomorrow morning. So if you want to hear my garlic aioli tones, Pommy, by all means, hop on the AFL app and have a listen.
Mate, he's the best in the biz. Do you know what I mean? The best in the biz. So go and check that out. But we'll be back next week, hopefully, if Legdog doesn't just decide, just booking functions on his own show. Legdog will be back. If not, we'll replace him with Paolo. But until then, Go Blues and have a good week.
Hooroo, guys.